In 2025, researchers found that AI search referrals to the US retail sites surged 1,300% during the holiday season. The challenge is clear that SEO no longer ends with the SERP rankings, and it now starts with AI powered doorways into your brand. So, how must retailers evolve to stay ahead? You're listening to the Voice of Search podcast. My name's Tyson, and I'm joined today by AJ Gurich, Global VP at Botify. AJ is going to be sharing for us how retail market is evolving with the new AI search. Welcome to the show, AJ.
Excited to be here.
Thanks. I am excited for this too. Like I've also spent a fair amount of time in the retail sector. I feel like also where we're at, it's like now being fully embraced, how like that buyer's journey is like totally kind of shifting and changing. So maybe like to lead into that, like what's your perspective on these shifts and how is it impacting retail specifically?
Yeah, great question. It's kind of, that's where everything starts, right? That's the genesis where if you break things down to the simplest components, you have a change in the interface. So we went from this kind of search interface where people were doing, keyword search, discovery, click conversion, to this more conversational interface. And that it's simple, but that change from keywords to conversation has really changed the dynamic in discovery. It's done some, I don't want to say damage, but probably damage to the way people do attribution, and everyone's dealing with that as well. But before we get into that black hole, I think just understanding that we went from keywords to conversation and how consumers are interacting with and discovering brands and products will never be the same is a key thing to always keep in the back of your mind as we enter in these type of discussions.
Yeah, and it's like in a lot of ways, I feel like some of the fundamentals or like approach is still intact, where you're still dealing with consumer behavior, you're still dealing with like a discovery phase of more of like decision making phase. So it's like I think those like more broader stroke elements are still intact, but I agree with you. It's like now we're playing on a slightly different field where, it's a new board that we're playing on, but still those fundamentals of how a consumer will go through that buyer journey, I think is intact. And that should give some comfort to SEOs out there that may be like kind of worried or panicked of how do I stay competitive in this new landscape. But at least from my perspective, like that to me at least is intact. You're just now we're operating in a new experience.
It's a great point. Yeah. So the interface has changed, but the consumer hasn't, right? I mean, did the whole world's consumer base radically change in the last 3 years? No, but the interfaces they use and how they use them dramatically shifted. So the good thing is we can fall back on good old reliable humanity doing humanity things. So, people still think and act the same way. They make illogical decisions with their heart instead of their head. And they tend to follow pretty predictable journeys. And so I think that's another good point. As you enter into these discussions, it's like, what's changed? The interface. What hasn't actually changed? Like your customer's still pretty much the same as they were a couple of years ago.
And maybe like let's dive into that experience from the consumer, because before, obviously it's like you had your more traditional keyword research. Where are you competing? How are you performing in that? But now so much of that experience, especially in that early stages of the buyer's journey, is taking place in ChatGPT, AI mode, whatever kind of emerging space it is. So like, how are you viewing that and its impact to us as like SEOs?
Yeah, so this one, you'll just stop me before in case I go long here, because there's a couple different parts here. But like,
Hmm.
the first thing, like I mentioned, the black hole earlier, like the elephant in the room is a lot of people have a donut hole in their data. So there is no search console from ChatGPT and Perplexity. AI mode is bundled in with just web traffic at Google. So when you look at your analytics, everyone sort of has a donut hole in their analytics. So it starts there from a brand and a marketer's perspective. You're like, well, wait a minute, how can I repackage this so I'm whole and like see
Hmm.
where this is gone? From the consumer perspective, I mean, it's exactly how you laid out. Search was so interesting. I even think from a market research standpoint because it was thought to keystroke. So when you were mining search data, you were really mining intentionality. Um, what I'm excited about though with this change, so yes, it has issues where you're like, oh shoot, now I have to like attribute revenue to Copilot, and like, how am I going to do that? It's like, here we go. It's a mess, right? But think about what we gained. So before you had to take keywords and divine intent. So you get your data scientists and your marketers and your statisticians, and you're like, okay, this keyword is this. And we did like the basics pretty well, like informational, transactional. But deeper than that, like two or three layers deeper, was much harder. Took a lot more effort to get to true intent. Well, this has the ability for the consumer to give us the intent in the conversation, right? In the context. And if we do our job right, brands have the ability to serve the consumer better. Whereas before, we had to kind of guess. You buy all these keywords in paid media, or you do these certain articles, and you're sort of inferring intent. You're guessing, pay for the ad, pay for the social, place your content, update your SEO. Like this could be a moment where it's better for the brand. It's more efficient because they're serving true intent. And it's better for the customer because they're not getting interrupted with things that actually don't map their intent. Now,
Hmm.
call me in 3 years and let's see how we do as an industry here. But like I'm glass half full. Like look at what the opportunity is in front of us. It all comes down to intent. We had to infer it with keywords. And now we should be able to see it much more clearly with conversation. And it's up to brands to now do the right thing with that data and serve the intent properly. And it should be a better consumer and customer experience and a more efficient brand experience, especially on the spend side.
Which you made a couple of great points there. And it's like, yeah, with essentially like the queries having more context to them, like we're able to get to those, what's the intent behind this. But
Yeah.
I think like you also hit on, hey, we also have this kind of black hole or these blind spots in attribution. So like, do you have any like tips or recommendations of like how do you close the gap? And so from the query itself, we can get more information, but then where
Yeah.
do we find that to then kind of lead our efforts from a web development perspective?
Yeah. There's a couple of things. I'll say something that's actually very timely. So if you're deep in the search industry, you probably have seen, and if not, I'll just explain it. There's this issue where Google eliminated the ability to see 100 results at a time, like the N100 parameter. So a lot of people think of Google like 1 to 10 blue links, traditional, right? But there was a way, obviously, you could turn it to 1 to 100. Why would you do that? Well, if you were a rank tracking tool, I won't name the names, and it's not like I'm shaming them, but like every rank tracking tool on the planet was doing 100 results at a time. So you could say, hey, your position 32, your position, you're right at the beginning of page 2 or 3, and like, content gap analysis, and here's what you should rise to page 1. So every ranking tool out there was using this, to my understanding.
Hmm.
They were using that version, much more cheaper for them too, because they're pulling 100 results in one poll versus 10 polls. So around Spotify, we set on all kinds of data from log files from the biggest companies, retail, e-commerce on the planet. So we see their search data, we see their log data, and there's a lot of interesting trends in there. So right around September 8th through the 12th, we started to see some anomalies show up in the data. Long story short, I've talked with our data science team. I pulled all the data, and this will be like, if you're listening to this, this is going to show up in your data. So what we saw was around the exact moment Google nerfed the 100 at a time results, which, by the way, they did with no announcement. They didn't say this is being deprecated. They just turned it off one day. And they would argue, well, you weren't supposed to be scraping anyhow, so we didn't have to alert you. Was it a paid feature? So they turn it off, right? And then something very interesting happens. Everyone's impressions tank. So what's been happening? I've been at conferences all year, and I've been putting up a graph, and I say something like this: I don't have to know you, but I know this is true. Your impressions are way up through the roof this year, and your clicks are flatter down. And everyone's like, yep, that's what's happening to me. And so year over year, I did a like cohort analysis, just like, let me look at several hundred, let's call it 300-400 e-commerce sites. And these are some of the biggest in the world and in retailers. All their impressions were up, let's call it 35 to 45% year over year. Soon as this came through, they all went to flatline to slightly negative year over year growth overnight. So what does that tell you? What it tells you is there's been a lot of noise in the signal. So the data that you've been collecting, we've been collecting, everyone's been collecting, has been noisy as heck. And it's only gotten more noise because of the rise of all the AI tools over the top. So it was like we kind of had this baked in for a long time, rank tracking tools, probably a small percentage, but it's gotten to this zenith moment. And so what I'm recommending everyone to do is go back and put a little bit of a thumb on the scale. Like if your impressions have been up in 2024, 2025, riding that 30, 40% gain, a lot of that, we can go industry by industry, but at least 10, 20% of that was noise. It wasn't actually real. So when you're looking at your end of Q3 data, everyone in the world is going to see drops in impressions. They're going to see average position rate improve, but it actually didn't. It's just the same, but 100 results at a time aren't being shown. And then in click through rates probably will stay mostly in range because those tools, those bots in the scrapers weren't clicking anything; they were just searching. So it's an interesting moment. So coming back to your question. It's so tough right now because literally even the traditional, that's just impressions, average position, clicks, even that is already a lot of noise in it. Then you say, okay, what about AI mode? What about AI overviews? What about Perplexity? What about Claude? What about ChatGPT? So what I'm advocating is actually something a little about, I don't know if it's radical or not, but don't try to replicate traditional rank tracking and search positioning with AI search. Rank tracking was way more deterministic. LLMs are probabilistic and much more personalized. And so I see our industry, I'm kind of using broad brush here, making a mistake, in my opinion. Everyone's rushing to go, okay, I have this donut hole in my data, right? Yes, we all see it. And they're trying to fill it in the traditional way, like it's a like for like replacement with rank trackers and positioning with Gen AI share of voice type thing. They're two completely different systems, and you're not going to be able to fill it. And if you do, I would argue, unfortunately, you're going to fill it with dirty data. And so that it's not the great answer anyone wants. And but again, I can tell you in a second some things that I think are positive that you can get out of that are quite good. But don't rush out and try to replace rank tracking with Gen AI data. You're going to get dirty data into the system and more noise than is necessary.
And that's such a great point that you brought up too, just because, yeah, I'd come across the same thing and pretty much every SEO I feel like is going to have some sort of explaining to do on the executive level.
Yes.
Um, and so, I mean, I guess like call out to everyone. It's like, yeah, be proactive on this. Like, don't wait until upper management, whatever says it, because if
Mhm.
you're proactive in communicating it, it's ultimately going to make your life easier. And so we know that this is happening. The magnitude of impact obviously will vary between, websites and things like that. But I think it is a fair point that's just like make the note, look into how this has impact your site, but then also be proactive in the stakeholder management to set expectations from it. But even with that, it kind of leads us to, well, how, like as an industry,
Yeah.
we've kind of gotten into this, like, I don't know, I mean, for better or worse, but it's like, for the longest time, we've just tried to be like pushing, keyword position, these like leading variables instead
It's
of
we
just,
went from like fighting the fight to like, no, everyone's bought in and everyone's whole health of business metrics are now those metrics. So it's like, in a way, our industry won, but now how do we do act two? Right? Like,
mm,
it's
and
like, yeah.
any any advice or like any like how are you thinking about that then as far as like what do you fill that void with? Like how do you champion and like kind of
So
push SEO awareness across the organization with other
every
KPIs?
conversation I'm having with CMOs across the globe is like this conversation, right? It's
Mm,
like, it starts with like, what are the changing in behaviors to like, oh my gosh, I have a hole in my data, and then what the heck do we do about it, right? And it's just the same arc over and over. And while I don't have all the answers, anybody who tells you they do, you should run away. But I think of this as like a three horizon measurement strategy. So
mm,
horizon one is now, horizon two is near, horizon three is far, right? You should run those as simultaneous clocks, not linear, now, near, far. They should be three clocks running at the same time, three horizons. So in the now, I really think folks should use this moment. Like what I said a second ago, if you need to rewind it and listen again, your data is dirty right now. Those impression spikes, go look at your impression spikes and then just do you think all of a sudden you have wildly all these impressions and you weren't getting the clicks and you couldn't figure it out? Like you're like, why? What is this? And everyone kind of blamed it on ChatGPT. They were like, well, it's AI mode, AI overview. Like it's ChatGPT effect, we'll say, obviously, because Gemini but they blamed it on AI. What they were sort of right, but sort of wrong. A lot of this was
mm,
the noise in the machine itself, like AI checking, surfacing, searching, tools checking, surfacing, searching, exploded. And so, what I'm telling you, so Horizon One, the near, like this should be in the next 60 days, fix, put your thumb on the scale. Now that you can see it in your data, you'll see your impressions going along, and they're going to cliff dive. They'll cliff dive. It's right in your search console. Go look at it. It'll cliff dive. That's the glimpse. You got a glimpse of reality before all these tools recover and figure out how to. That's the truth. So my first thought would be go back and look at 2024, 2025 with a more realistic viewpoint. Your impressions, like you'll be able to see your individual shift, but I wouldn't be shocked if they're 20 to 40% inflated for most folks. Like put your thumb on the scale and now relook at your numbers. Relook at your click through
mm,
rate. Like you may be making some bad assumptions, like, oh, we're getting all these impressions, not getting a lot of clicks, and well, I should change the head. Like, what if you make bad decisions on dirty data? So that's number one. Horizon two is dip your toe in AI waters for attribution and visibility. Start simple, like AI share of voice, citations. You should know, if a keyword, a traditional keyword, shows an AI overview or it doesn't. You should know if you show up in that AI overview or if you don't. You could probably go on and insert here 4 or 5, like put 4 or 5 of those things on the board and say, I have directional visibility in that. That should be your near horizon, and that should be over the next 2 to 6 months. Like lock that in, get that straight. The third horizon is frankly where this is all headed, and it's going to be a unified AI native measurement system. The problem is you shouldn't get, I guess it's a problem or not problem. Shouldn't get too worked up about it because there's not much you can do about it yet. This is the same thing that happened with social media. Remember when everyone was like, hey, like we really want to get more of those thumbs ups. Like we like those likes. And then like people are like, well, what's the value of a like? And like, does that actually bring us a customer? And then like, but now we don't even really think about that. Like no one's saying social media is not valuable. No one's saying they can't attribute it. So these things will like take care of themselves. Like there's too much money at stake. I'm not that worried
Mm-hmm.
about the long horizon. It will be AI native. We will be able to attribute from a conversation. I mean, you saw yesterday, ChatGPT integrated with one click checkout, for Etsy and a few of the others, right? Like this will come. So what I would focus on is horizon 1 and 2, like the things that you could do in the next 30, 60 days, in the next 6 months. And those things that I just laid out are the baby steps, but you'll be a way ahead of your peers if you just do those now and then wait, stop. Don't go crazy and try to make it perfect because the ecosystem is building itself. The infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
play is building itself. So don't go ballistic, spend all this time and money trying to make it perfect. Have a visibility model and leave it there. And then let's circle back to that in 12 months and see where we're at. And I think we'll be in a lot better place.
And I like that you're, advocating like, hey, don't make this the cornerstone of your work. Because at the end of the
Yes.
day, if you're only focused on performance tracking, you're not actually making any significant business value. It's like you're not driving value to your business if you're
Yes.
just knowing how you're performing or where you're performing. At the end of the day, that's just a tool to then guide your strategy, guide your activities. And I think that's been something, at least I've been trying to really like push people on is like, yes, you need to like be aware of these performance pieces, but at the end of the day, what actions are you taking from it? And I think like that's
You
such a
nailed it.
significant piece.
You nailed it. I keep saying a similar kind of drumbeat is 2025 is like when we look back, like there were moments where you're like, that ended up, we kind of falsely heralded it, but eventually we were like, that was the year of mobile. I think it was like coming for many years. And then finally it was like, yeah, mobile. Like 2025 is, in my opinion, the year of visibility. Everyone was like, am I visible on all of these emergent interfaces and am I it's a visibility. 2026, everyone will shift to action. Just what you just said. Like
Mm.
what the hell do we do about it, right? Even okay, I'm visible. Okay, I'm invisible. Now what? Right? Now what am I doing? Like am I doubling down? Am I panicking? Like what do I do? And that's the conversations that I think are more important because they're more customer centric versus brand centric. Um, and they're much more proactive versus reactive. Now, again, it's scary to be in a dark room. So, yes, turn on some flashlights, get some data, understand your visibility, but don't go so crazy thinking that that's the end state is to solve for how visible or invisible am I. It's like you're going to have to move to action. And I think you really should be either doing that now or very, by in January, like action minded, because that's the true game. What you just stated was spot on.
And maybe like, how would you suggest people look into that? Like, so basically, we've carved out obviously like these changes, how we're looking at it. Essentially, performance tracking you're using for either stakeholder management or guiding strategy.
Yeah.
Within this kind of new space, like how would you be and maybe let's ground within ecom. Like how would you advise people to be thinking about how they compete in this new space?
So I think it starts and ends in a way the same place it always did was with intent mapping. Like,
Mm.
um, I really want folks to go. Do not accept that. So go look at your data or ask someone. Do we have? Let me see our intent mapping. And if your intent mapping ends at transactional, commercial, navigational, I would argue you don't have intent mapping. Like, what are you going to do with that? So, like, okay, your insert big box retailer here. I have 1.2 million commercial keyword. Like, what are you going to do? What's the action behind that? There is no action behind that, right? And so I would be focusing, like, you need all of these things. You need, your share of voice, your citations. You need to know that so that you can take what action? Map the intent.
Mm.
Map the intent to what? To my content, to my paid ads, to my social ads, to my influencer outreach. Map the intent at a deep level. It's so possible now and so at your fingertips, but all the tooling is yesterday's tooling, and it's giving you very basic clustering, and it doesn't map. And even if it was giving you better intent, it's not going to map to your journey map. So you already know your journey map. That's baked, like, unless you're a startup, right? Like, everyone has customer persona data, they have journey maps. Go back and map the intent. Once you do
Mm.
that and you use this type of layer, this AI layer, to layer over your journey map with deep intent, everything becomes so much more clear. Where are my gaps? Where am I not meeting? And here's what I love about it is it's so customer centric. Where am I not meeting the customer where she is? Where am I not speaking her language? Literally, like, what passage on this page? Because then you can score it. You can score it at a page level. You can score it at an ad campaign level. It's intent for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are, I will say, so that's a macro, like, CMO type thought, right? um, if you dip down, um, there's an infra play here that we have to deal with. If you remember back in the day, I was talking to somebody. Remember when we used to have, like, worry about design for, like, Firefox, and you're like, well, it breaks in Firefox. I don't know if I'm old, so, like, it was like the button would move, and like you're like, ah. um, that's what's happening with LLMs. Sit next to somebody technical. If you're not technical, sit next to them and say, show me what ChatGPT's training bot sees. Well, actually, first answer this. Do we have any way of telling if it's a bot that's stealing our content, training on our content, or if it's a bot that's buying something, or if it's about, like, do we have any way of tracking these, understanding what bot it is, right? So that's an infrastructure play. So you need to know that so that you can't govern it if it's wild west. You have no idea which bot is which. Then once you do that, sit next to somebody and just say, show me what ChatGPT, I'll use them as a proxy. Show me what ChatGPT sees when they visit my category page. Show me what ChatGPT sees when it visits my PDP. And you'll be very surprised in many cases. So right now, while they have incredible technology, like, oh my gosh, like, is this gonna, take over the world? They're really not good at the basics of, like, crawling the web and indexing it. So most LLMs can't render even JavaScript right now. Very few, or they do it very poorly. And so you'll be surprised. A lot of times you have these beautiful product carousels and information and tabs, and you look at it and you go, oh, shoot, our website is broken in Firefox. It's the same, you know what I mean? It's the same thing. It's like Claude is not having a good time. So there's an infra play where you need to make sure that you literally are able to be crawled, rendered, and indexed by these LLM bots. It's a pain in the butt, but you have to do it. And the fixes are, there, but many people are just unaware that hey, we don't know if we have render issues for Perplexity until you know. So I would do that, and then the third thing I would be focused on are feeds. So that's another. So, like, all of the world's content needs to get updated for the new dominant consumer, which is AI itself. AI itself will consume most of your content on behalf of a consumer or a customer and summarize it back to her, right? So AI is kind of your gate. It's your AI decides if it's a bridge or a barrier between you and the customer. So it's in a way it's your most dominant customer. And so you feeds are really great because you can augment the feeds with more enriched data for the AI to make more intent based reasoning. Um, and that helps everything. Like if you enhance your feeds, that your paid media team is going to give you a high five. If you enhance your feeds, like your SEO team is going to give you a high five. Like it's good for everyone to enhance this data, and it's much more scalable to start at feed. So if I go into a big box retailer and I say you need to change all of your content, shoot, right? Like that's not very scalable. But if I say let's focus on your feeds and enhancing them for intent, much more scalable. You can roll it out on global, multilingual. Like it's much more scalable activity. So I would focus there if I were just like where do I start? I would start there.
It's such good advice. And I mean, maybe just to regurgitate back some of that, just because I want to make sure that people walk away with some of those kind of key takeaways. And at least from what I'm hearing in that is it still starts with like indexation health and what these systems are actually seeing, what they're able to render. And so you're understanding, am I even in the game from it?
Yep.
Then we're looking at how can we make it easier for them, whether it's through product feeds, schema markup, whatever type of structured data that's going to make that then more digestible. And then, of course, you have then all the other bells and whistles and things that you can add on where, you know, you're bridging into overlap with UX on conversion rates. Right. You're looking at your content structure of how easy it is to pick up that information.
Exactly.
Maybe kind of just
those are like the things you just described, like those are bend down, pick up a dollar activities, right? Like those are much easier. It's harder. Like at Botify, we like once we get done with a client doing the basics, like we start talking like well, wait a minute, like what if we served flat HTML content to this bot and this structure, and like yes, but that's not conversation A. Right. That's like this other stuff you can just do now. And it's very, very scalable. And then once you've checked those boxes, obviously you can move to the more advanced stuff where you're serving certain bots, or like eventually a lot of sites are going to serve agents very different than they would a human. An agent doesn't really need a web interface the same way a human does. Like there's a lot of that that's coming. But for now, it's like before you get too wound up, just do those basic blocking and tackling, and it'll set you up. And the beautiful thing is everything you just described, everything we just talked about is good for traditional. So it's still, which is still drives the most of your traffic. So it's a win. Cheesy. It's a win-win. But it is a win-win.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm glad that you called that out too, because obviously anytime you have big movements in the industry, you have, you know, some people that are going to be like, the sky's falling. What do I do? And then other people, it's like, great. This is why I'm in the industry. I want to have this like challenge, this variability. But a lot of the ways that I'm looking at it is like most of these things that then we're talking about, these aren't entirely new concepts to us. And so I think like the levers and the plays you have, like, yeah, there's some nuance and difference, but it's more of like, how do you prioritize? Like, how does this shift your prioritization and strategy rather than do I have to learn entirely net new tactics? And I think that's something that SEOs should have a little more confidence, a little more comfort in, is you've been playing this game. It's still the same game that you're playing.
And SEOs have proven that we could, you know, if I'm talking to a group of SEOs, I tell them, you've already done this. You demystified the first black box, which was Google itself. It came in disruptive technology with no user manual, and we demystified it and made a playbook for brands to follow, and now it's pretty known and widely followed. We're going to do the same thing with AI search. And the good news is many of the same behaviors will be beneficial for both. And the key, like if you're like, there's a lot of like argument, like, well, is it different? Like, is it AI, AEO, GEO, SEO? Like, I don't care about any of that conversation, frankly, right? Like it's missing the point entirely, in my opinion. So, but that's like industry speak for us. But at the same time, it doesn't matter what you call it. Everything that we've just talked about would help whatever acronym you use, right? And that's the point. Like people just want to get down to like, what would move the needle? What should I do now? What should I ignore and not do? Like just just straight actionable advice is what I hear people kind of yearning for, without all the hype and the noise.
100%. And it's end of the day, it's like that's what we've signed up for. But
Yeah.
with that, we're gonna roll into kind of like the lightning round here. And so I'm gonna throw kind of 5 different shorter form questions at you that are gonna have its own kind of theme too. And the first one is gonna be crystal ball. So you're looking out into the future and how you're seeing the world. And so the question is, how will retail search behavior shift over the next 18 months as AI shopping assistants gain traction and popularity?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if this is what I would use that crystal ball for. I think I would be, but yeah, but okay. In that constraint, what I'm talking to leaders at companies about right now is Black Friday, because it's top of mind. And my point is, this is the last Black Friday that AI search won't dominate, that agentic search won't dominate. This is the last one. This is the last traditional Black Friday that you're going to have. It will be influenced by AI. It's not like ChatGPT is going to play no impact on this. But let's be realistic. What is the impact? 5%, 10%, 12%. No one's going, it's going to impact 42% unless you're in a very specific industry, but it's not there yet. 18 months from now, next Black Friday, oh hell yeah. Like
Mm,
it is coming like a freight train. And the user adoption, they are shifting and changing interfaces. They're changing interfaces at an exponential curve, and it's happening at a global pace. So yes, I mean, like I said, if yesterday they're installing one-click checkout, for your Etsy purchase, and they're about to onboard Shopify, this is it. This is the last traditional moment, and we're going to see, like I said, the rise of AI itself being your customer. Do not The 18 months from now, your customer will be AI. That will be your customer. And so you need to stop, like tomorrow, stop thinking about AI as a technology to trick or influence, or like we do this and we can like make it do that. And no, like, would you do that with your customer? That's not a good long-term game. Like, go back to the basics. What is the AI like? Where does it get its facts? Where does it make its decisions? Like, how can we rightfully and properly nurture this relationship, influence it? Like, think of it that way, because in 18 months, it will be everyone's dominant customer.
mm. I like that you called out Black Friday too in that, because I think even though, and I agree with you that it's like we'll see an impact this year, but it's like come next year Black Friday, it's like yeah, I would expect the entire consumer experience to be quite a bit different. But I do think that there's that opportunity right now for those brands and those companies that can move quicker. And a lot of times these big brands, it's like changing the direction of like a cruise ship where it takes a little bit more time. You're
Yeah,
having to get more people on board. So it's like if you are able to move quickly and mobilize, like you actually do have an opportunity to get that inside lane. And so as much as you can, especially if you're the up and comer in your
yep,
category or space, try to use this as that opportunity to get the head start on it. Now,
100%.
next one,
If you're a cruise ship, launch speedboats. If you're a speedboat, keep trucking. Right?
absolutely. Now, next one is going to be buy or sell. Will traditional
Yeah.
ring tracking become obsolete for retail brands within the next 2 years?
So I'm going to say sell, but not because of why you think. I'm going to say sell because it already happened. So
Okay.
So I literally think, like, mark the time, like the date. I could tell you when it happened. It was September 10th of this year. That's when it happened. This moment that we talked about earlier showed how much noise was already in the signal, and it's a lot. And we could share later. Like, I'll send them over to you, and maybe we can even put something in the notes. Like, we're Spotify, we're going to share the data, and this is data from like the biggest box retailers on the world, up like biggest brands. Like, if it's in their data, it's in your data, and so I already know it. It literally just happened. It's already, um, not a reliable source on its own. Should you look at it? Yes. Like, is it directionally pretty correct? Yes, but it is no longer, the game is over. Like, it is no longer that world, and it's never coming back.
I couldn't agree more. I would absolutely sell on it. And I mean, I would just go back earlier in the conversation too and say, like, at the end of the day, whether it's rank tracking or visibility in ChatGPT, whatever other system, you have two main value points: managing stakeholders within your organization and guiding and shifting strategy. And once you're not getting value in one of those two areas, it's probably a waste of your time.
Yep.
Next one is trend or trash. Optimizing product content specifically for AI summarizations. Is it a trend or a trash?
I'll go with what I feel is like the spirit of the question. I think it's trend more than trash. It's just that
Mm.
there's a lot of trash in the trend. So like, so there, you know what I mean? Like, look, like, if I can't sit here and say don't do it if I'm telling you AI is your customer, right? So like, if AI is your customer, then yes, you should, but don't, like, don't do the thing. Don't go out there, spam out a bunch of AI written content that like don't try to game the system. This is what happened in SEO when we demystified the black box. I did it too. Very young in my career, I gamed it. I had clients ranking for the word poker and blackjack and anything you could imagine. We were ranking for it through manipulation, right? Through manipulation back in the day. So let's not repeat the sin of the past. Let's not manipulate the AI with like some like content mix and no, just solve the intent. Solve the intent. But yes, you should think about it from the AI's perspective, because what if the AI, like, think of it this way. What if you had a user with accessibility issues? Would you relook at your colors? Would you relook at your font size? What if we're serving an elderly population? Like, you would think about their accessibility issues, right? Think about AI from that perspective. What uh, what can it see? What can it not see? What is it? How does it like to consume information? In what order? Does it like structured data? Does it not? Feeds. Like, think about it that way. But it's a mindset thing, not it's about serving the intent of your rising dominant consumer AI itself. Do not get caught up in the I will manipulate this. I just feel like that's a poor way to welcome your new customer.
Yeah, and I mean, it's in that sense too. It's like short-term games versus long-term strategy. And I would say too on this, it is a trend, and simply it is for that same reason that you're saying. It's like that is now your customer, or like a primary customer, because it's then feeding everything to that end consumer. So yeah, it's one of those things you just have to lean in on this point.
Yep.
All right. So next question, it's going to be, what's the word? What's one word that defines the evolving connection between retail SEO teams and AI engineers?
So the word that comes to mind is alchemy. So, kind of combining different ingredients to make something more than the sum of its parts. Um, I talk to a lot of leaders, and maybe we'll have a on site, and maybe we're having a drink afterwards, something like that. I'm getting a lot of like taps on the shoulders and like, hey, like, should I still be hiring for like traditional SEO team here, or like, should we go with like a GEO agency, or should I bring in someone from that, or like how do I get my engineering more better integrated? Alchemy. The answer is none of those things on their own are enough. You need them
Mhm.
all. And Gen AI and AI search has the chance to be a hub inside of your org for all of your spokes. So it should be the uniting force for all of your spokes, not just SEO, engineering, like social, PR, like everything should unite around the hub of AI search. And if you do that, you're going to be in a lot better position. I don't think it's like, let me switch horses to this one or that one, or one specific bet is going to win. It's a mix. It's alchemy.
Absolutely. It's how how are you bringing this into like the core approach of the organization rather than just being,
Yes,
a flash in the pan?
100%.
Now, final question is going to be game plan. So for this one, scenario based, you're the SEO director at a major retail brand. What's your strategy for managing stakeholders within the organization to combat the shifts in the search industry?
So what I'll go a little more like technical on this answer, just to give you, or tactical on this answer, instead of giving you several like macro answers. Um, there's a concept in with LLMs called grounding, and if you're not familiar with it, it's a fancy way of saying that LLMs kind of suck if they don't have a lot of context, and they need grounding or context to make good decisions. So typically when I'm talking with a brand, I might say something like, as a first pass, let's see how much of your traditional traffic would require grounding, or the LLM could just answer. So like, when was George Washington, what's George Washington's birthday? Like, that doesn't need grounding. And they, like, it knows the
Mm,
answer, right? 2 plus 2 usually knows the answer. So, you know, how many peas and pineapples? It tends to mess that up. But in general, it's what requires grounding and what doesn't. Usually, what we find is about 90% or more of an e-commerce retailer, insert here, the traditional searches and the conversational searches require grounding. And so they need additional context. That context comes through, wait for it, traditional search. So the agent, the fancy agent, what does it do? The agent does a query fan out. Query fan out is just it guessing the next 20 questions you might have and Googling them or Binging them, right? And so what's interesting about this from a strategy standpoint is, until there, obviously are probably orders of magnitude leaps ahead, even if, let's say, even if ChatGPT makes its own index and they don't even, it's still an index. It's still crawl, render, index, right? Then rank and convert. And like SEOs, we get way caught up on the right side of that graph and we're like, where are my rankings? How do they convert? Back in the day, you're thinking about crawl, render, index so that you can rank. And that's where I would be focusing. And again, I like the win-wins because that gives me a win for the traditional, and I can hold on to my traditional traffic. Why? Because I'm focusing on things that help me get indexed and rank. Well, that's the same thing. Again, AI is your customer. AI is going to do the querying for her. AI is going to pull the Google result. AI is going to do the summarization and then pass back to her recommendations. So you win or lose at that moment of, was I visible? Was I indexed? Did I rank? And so if you focus on some of those traditional things right now, you'll win in both areas. So grounded search and understanding what of my queries, what of my intents require grounding, you'll probably find it's a lot of them. And then as soon as you know that your entire game is won or lost at live retrieval when that agent or tool calls a search query. So the whole game is winning or lost at live retrieval.
that's such good advice. And I think, dude, it's like you could probably take multiple points in this conversation and use that for, how should I be managing these expectations? And I think, one of the things that we hit on earlier too is like, be early, be vocal. Like there's an awareness and an understanding because you have elements of education, you have elements of also just establishing that reassurance that one, you and your team's ahead of this, and two, the game's still the same. Like we've said, we're throwing different labels on, we're prioritizing differently, but it's not a sense of, hey, let's panic. Yep, it's a state of change, but it's something that we've become accustomed to at this point.
Totally agree.
All right, so that wraps up this episode of the Voice of Search podcast. Thanks again to AJ Gergich from Botify for joining us. If you'd like to contact AJ, you can find his LinkedIn profile in the show notes, or you can go on over and check out his company's website at botify.com. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of SEO and content marketing knowledge in your podcast feed, hit that subscribe button in your podcast app or on YouTube, and we'll be back in your feed soon. So with that, wraps up this episode. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you in the next episode.